The pain no one wants to talk about. For weeks, Daniel Prescott told himself it was nothing. A little discomfort while sitting at his desk. A dull ache after long meetings. An occasional sting during his morning routine. But one afternoon, mid-conference call, halfway through typing an email, it felt like someone had lit a match beneath his chair. He stood up so fast, he knocked over his coffee. That's when the shame set in. Because Daniel, like millions of men and women in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, was dealing with something he didn't know how to talk about. Hemorrhoids. And the worst part, he thought he was doing everything right, eating better, walking after work, keeping his weight down. So what went wrong? Simple. He sat still for a living. How a chair becomes a trigger. Let's be clear, sitting isn't evil. But uninterrupted, prolonged sitting, the kind we do for hours at desks, behind the wheel, or watching screens, creates a perfect storm in the lower body. Here's what happens. Blood flow slows in the pelvic region. Pressure builds on the veins around the rectum. The anal cushions, small structures meant to help control bowel movements, begin to swell. Over time, those swollen veins stretch and weaken, and what starts as discomfort becomes inflammation, protrusion, and sometimes even bleeding. Hemorrhoids aren't just about age or diet. They're about circulation, and nowhere is circulation more compromised than in an office chair. The accountant who couldn't sit anymore. Mary Lane, 64, worked from home in Seattle, CPA. Proud grandmother, she joked that she lived in Excel spreadsheets. But by the time she came to me, she wasn't laughing. She had begun avoiding long car rides, turning down movie nights, standing during church. It's not the pain, she told me. It's the embarrassment. Her voice cracked when she said it. She didn't tell her daughters, not even her husband. She just quietly suffered. Her first question wasn't, "What caused this?" It was, "Is it my fault?" And that's where we began. Not with creams or cushions, but with the truth. It's not your fault, but it is your pattern. People with hemorrhoids often blame themselves. I should eat more fiber. I need to lose weight. Maybe I strained too much. And yes, those things matter. But what I see over and over is this. The most consistent pattern in hemorrhoid cases? Stillness. 8 hours in a chair. No breaks, no movement, no circulation. It doesn't matter if you're thin, active after work, or eating clean. If your blood doesn't move for most of the day, your veins will suffer. And the veins around the rectum, they suffer first. Because unlike other veins in the body, they don't have strong muscle support. They rely on you, your movement, your breath, your posture, to stay healthy. Take that away, and pressure builds. Quietly. Until one day, your chair becomes your enemy. Why the pain is so hard to talk about? Let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you talked about your bottom? Not your back, not your belly, your bottom, your bowel habits, your discomfort, your skin. For most people, the answer is never. We've been taught to see it as dirty, private, or shameful. But here's the truth I tell my patients. Your bottom is not embarrassing. It's beautifully engineered. It carries waste, supports your posture, signals when something's wrong. And when you hurt there, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've ignored an area that's been whispering for attention. A different kind of healing. When Daniel returned after his diagnosis, we didn't just talk about fiber supplements or sitz baths. We talked about setting a timer to stand every 30 minutes, shifting from a regular chair to a standing desk, simple pelvic floor stretches twice a day, deep breathing to increase blood flow to the pelvis, and above all, letting go of shame. Within 6 weeks, he wasn't just sitting more comfortably. He was sleeping better, digesting better, laughing again. Because once he acknowledged the problem, he could finally heal it. And this is just the beginning. In our next chapter, we'll dive deeper into the mechanics of sitting, how posture, breath, and even toilet position affect hemorrhoid risk, and what you can change today to ease pressure, restore blood flow, and begin the quiet work of healing from the inside out. Because you deserve to sit without fear, and your body deserves to be heard, even in the places we rarely talk about. How we sit and how it hurts us. Most people don't think twice about how they sit. You lower yourself into a chair, lean back, cross your legs, maybe hunch a little, maybe lean to one side. Then you stay like that for hours. Emails, TV, driving, dining. But here's the truth. Every position you hold becomes a conversation with your body, and over time, bad posture becomes pressure. That pressure becomes stagnation. And stagnation, it becomes pain. Just ask Carolyn, 71, from Sacramento. She was a retired librarian, warm, sharp, loved crossword puzzles and card games with friends. But she sat in a soft recliner almost all day. Reading, knitting, watching birds out her window. When she came to me with symptoms of hemorrhoids, she was baffled. "I walk every morning," she said. "How did this happen?" The answer lay in how she rested, the hidden pressure of bad posture. Most people think hemorrhoids are caused by straining on the toilet, and while that's part of the story, it's not the full picture. Here's what posture does. Slouching compresses abdominal organs that increases intra-abdominal pressure, which slows blood return from the pelvic veins, which causes pooling in the rectal area, which leads to vein dilation and ultimately hemorrhoids. Now add tight clothing, weak core muscles, a sedentary lifestyle, and you've got a recipe for constant invisible pressure on the most sensitive veins in your body. It's like leaning on a garden hose all day and wondering why the water backs up. The breath you forgot. You had breathing may be the most underrated force in pelvic health. Most people breathe from their chest, shallow, tight, and disconnected from the belly. But diaphragmatic breathing, the kind that gently inflates the belly, creates a natural pump that supports circulation to the pelvis. It moves blood. It massages the organs. It eases pressure. I taught Carolyn to lie down, place a book on her stomach, and watch it rise and fall with each breath. She did it every afternoon. 10 minutes. And slowly her symptoms eased. Not because of medication, but because her body was finally moving from the inside. Even the way you use the bathroom matters. Let's talk about something delicate. Toilet posture. Most modern toilets don't support natural elimination. The seated angle makes it harder for the rectum to straighten, which leads to straining. That straining creates enormous pressure on hemorrhoidal veins. Here's what I recommend to patients. Use a footstool, like a squatty potty, to elevate the feet. Lean forward slightly with elbows on knees. Relax the belly and breathe deeply. Never force a bowel movement. If it doesn't come in a few minutes, walk around and try again later. Simple, humbling, but incredibly effective. One man told me, "I was more embarrassed to buy a footstool than to talk about my taxes, but it changed my mornings." What healing posture looks like. If you work at a desk or spend long hours sitting, here's how to adjust your position. Feet flat on the floor. Knees slightly lower than hips. Spine straight but not rigid. Stand and stretch every 30-60 minutes. Avoid sitting on hard or overly soft surfaces for long periods. Even better, sit on an exercise ball for part of the day, or kneel, or alternate with standing. Each variation invites blood flow, reminds the pelvic veins. You are not forgotten. You're not just sitting. You're sending a signal. When Carolyn changed her chair, her breath, and her bathroom habits, something else changed too. She told me, "I feel more in tune with my body, like it's working with me again." Because what we often call discomfort is really the body asking, "Are you listening yet?" And once we start to listen, not just in times of crisis, but in the quiet dailiness of sitting, breathing, and being, healing begins. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the foods that support healthy digestion, reduce pressure, and keep your bowels moving freely. Because when the gut flows, the veins stay calm. Because healing from hemorrhoids doesn't start in the medicine cabinet, it starts in the chair. The diet that silently builds pressure. When Sam Whitaker, 68, walked into my office, he carried a brown paper bag. Inside was his lunch, 2 ham sandwiches on white bread, a banana, and a bag of pretzels. He wasn't here for nutrition advice. He was here because he hadn't had a comfortable bowel movement in over a week, and when he finally did, there was blood. "I think it's hemorrhoids," he said quietly. He was right, but what he didn't realize was that his lunch, innocent, familiar, even healthy by some standards, was quietly fueling the problem. Because digestion doesn't just happen in the stomach, it happens in the rhythm of fiber, fluid, and freedom of movement. And when that rhythm breaks, the strain begins. The slow clog of a low-fiber life. Hemorrhoids thrive on pressure, and nothing builds pressure in the pelvic veins like constipation, straining, hard stools, the daily dread of going to the bathroom. So, let's talk about fiber, not as a buzzword, but as a lifesaver. Fiber comes in 2 types. Soluble fiber softens stool and helps it pass easily. Insoluble fiber adds bulk, keeping things moving through the intestines. Most Americans get less than half of what they need, and without fiber, your stool slows. It hardens. You strain. You push. The veins swell. It's not dramatic. It's daily, and that's why it's dangerous. The nurse who healed with oats and berries, Maria, 63, was a retired ER nurse from Raleigh. She was tough, practical, the kind who didn't complain, but her bathroom troubles had become too loud to ignore. Her turning point? A single question. How many different plant foods do you eat each week? Her answer, maybe 10. We made a plan. Oatmeal with flaxseed and blueberries for breakfast, a lentil soup or quinoa salad for lunch, roasted vegetables with brown rice for dinner, nuts and fruit as snacks, at least 6 to 8 glasses of water daily. Within 3 weeks, her bowel movements softened. No more bleeding, no more fear. It's not a diet, she told me. It's a flow. And she was right. The foods that help you heal. If you're struggling with hemorrhoids, here are the quiet heroes of your plate. Oats, barley, brown rice, lentils, beans, peas, chia seeds, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, apples, pears, berries, plums, leafy greens, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, squash, carrots, avocados, yes, a fruit, and full of fiber. Pair these with clean water, not just to hydrate, but to help fiber do its work. Fiber without water is like trying to push a dry sponge through a narrow pipe. Fiber with water? It glides, and your bathroom becomes a place of peace again. The enemies that seem harmless. Many people with hemorrhoids eat things they believe are safe. But here's what often causes trouble. Processed white bread and pasta, red meat, especially cured, or fatty cuts, cheese-heavy meals, fried foods, caffeine without hydration, alcohol, especially beer and wine. These foods don't just slow digestion, they inflame the gut, dehydrate the stool, and increase the likelihood of straining. I'm not asking you to give them up forever, but if you're hurting, pause. Give your body time to reset, and you may find that what once seemed indulgent now feels like a burden. You're free to let go. The quiet power of the plate. Sam started bringing a thermos of vegetable soup to work. He swapped pretzels for trail mix, ham sandwiches for hummus wraps. His coworkers teased him at first, but after a month, he was walking taller, sitting longer, smiling more. It's not just what I eat, he told me. It's what I don't dread anymore. He no longer feared the bathroom, and that's a freedom no sandwich can match. Food is not punishment. It's partnership. If you've struggled with hemorrhoids, I want you to know, you don't need to chase perfect eating. You just need to support your body's most natural rhythm, not with pills, not with harsh laxatives, but with gentle, daily nourishment. And in our next chapter, we'll explore another often missed piece of the puzzle: stress. Because pressure doesn't just come from the gut, it comes from within. And when we calm the mind, we ease the body. One breath at a time. When the mind squeezes the body, Helen Morris was a retired social worker from Denver, 70 years old, thoughtful, strong, always taking care of others. She came to me not for hemorrhoids, but for exhaustion. Sleepless nights. Headaches, digestive discomfort. And yes, discomfort down below that she was too embarrassed to mention until our third visit. It's probably just age, she said, but it wasn't. It was stress, not just worry, but deep, long-held tension that her body had absorbed for years. And nowhere was it showing up more clearly than her digestive system and her pelvic veins. Because when you're under stress, the body doesn't just feel tight, it becomes tight. The gut and the brain, an intimate conversation. The digestive tract is lined with over 100 million nerve cells, more than the spinal cord. Scientists now call it the second brain. That means your bowels don't just respond to food, they respond to mood. Here's what happens during chronic stress. The nervous system enters fight or flight mode. Blood is pulled away from the gut. Digestion slows or halts. Constipation sets. Straining increases. Veins in the rectal area swell under pressure. What begins in the mind, tight deadlines, grief, loneliness, unresolved conflict, ends in the body. And for many, that ending is pain during bowel movements, bleeding, and the growing fear of sitting down. The man who held it all in George, 67, from Omaha, was the picture of discipline. Retired engineer, pressed shirts, always punctual. But his wife had died 2 years earlier, and since then he'd kept himself busy. Too busy. He hadn't cried once, but his gut was crying. Hard stools, rectal pain, frequent flare-ups. He blamed the food, but it wasn't the food alone. It was the pressure, not just on his veins, but on his grief. When he finally allowed himself to talk, to remember, to weep, to exhale, his symptoms began to shift. Not overnight, but steadily. Because healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when the body no longer feels like it's under siege. Simple practices to soothe the system. Here's what I often recommend to patients like Helen and George, not as therapy, but as care. 1. Daily deep breathing. 5 minutes, morning and evening. Inhale through the nose. Let the belly rise. Exhale slowly through the mouth. Gentle movement. Tai Chi, stretching, short walks. Nothing strenuous. Just enough to tell your body, you're not trapped. Mindful moments. Sit by a window. Watch the trees. Listen to quiet music. Journal. Pray. These are not luxuries. They are medicine. Talk to someone. A friend, a therapist, a loved one. Carrying pain silently increases physical tension. Reframe the discomfort. Instead of, I'm falling apart, try, my body is asking for care in a loud way. Because it is. When silence becomes softness. Helen began a practice she called her 3 o'clock pause. Every afternoon she stepped away from the news, the phone, even the dishes, and sat with her hands on her belly. She breathed. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just listened to the birds outside. 3 months later, she reported not just fewer flare-ups, but deeper sleep, softer stools, and less urgency. It's not magic, she said, but I stopped fighting myself. And that's where so much healing begins. Let the pressure out. If you feel like your body is clenched, inside or out, I want you to know. You are not weak. You are carrying too much. And some of that pressure isn't physical. It's emotional, relational, Spiritual. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to start telling the truth. This is too much. I need ease. I need space. I need breath. And your body? It will listen. In the next chapter, we'll talk about natural remedies, those time-tested practices and gentle aids that soothe, cool, and relieve the burden of hemorrhoids without harsh chemicals or invasive procedures. Because relief is not just possible, it's often gentler than you think. Relief doesn't have to hurt. When Sylvia Harris first asked me about natural options, she said it with a whisper, like she was confessing something risky. She was 66, retired schoolteacher, grandmother of 6, and completely worn down from dealing with recurring hemorrhoids. "I'm tired of creams that burn and pills that clog me up," she said. "Is there anything that just helps?" There is. In fact, nature has been helping for thousands of years, long before drugstores, before surgery, before shame crept in and made people feel like they had to suffer in silence. Let me show you some of the gentle remedies that work, not for everyone, not as a magic fix, but as part of a real healing plan. One that listens to the body instead of trying to force it into silence. The power of warm water. The first and most underestimated remedy? A sitz bath. Just warm, not hot, water in a basin or shallow tub for 10 to 15 minutes, once or twice a day. It relaxes the anal muscles, increases blood flow to the area, soothes itching, and helps swollen tissues begin to shrink. Sylvia used a simple plastic basin that fit over her toilet. A few drops of witch hazel or Epsom salt added gentle anti-inflammatory effects. "It became my sanctuary," she told me, not just for pain, but for peace. Witch hazel, nature's cooling cloth. Witch hazel is a plant extract known for its astringent properties. It helps tighten skin, reduce swelling, and calm inflammation. You can find it in alcohol-free wipes, soothing pads, compresses liquid form to apply gently with cotton. I recommend alcohol-free formulations only. Harsh versions can sting or dry the skin too much. Witch hazel is especially useful after a bowel movement when tissues are tender. It's not dramatic, but healing rarely is. Aloe vera, the quiet soother. If you've ever used aloe vera on a sunburn, you know how gently it cools and calms the skin. Now imagine that same relief applied delicately to inflamed tissue. Use only pure, fragrance-free aloe vera gel, or fresh from the plant if you're comfortable preparing it. Apply with clean hands or a soft cloth. Keep it refrigerated for extra cooling effect. Patients tell me it's not just the physical sensation that helps. It's the act of caring, the kindness in taking a moment to ease your own pain. That matters. Horse chestnut and butcher's broom. Circulation's friends. For those with chronic or recurring hemorrhoids, I often discuss herbs that support vein health. Two of the best-studied horse chestnut extract, Aesculus hippocastanum. Butcher's broom, Ruscus aculeatus. Both help strengthen vein walls, improve circulation, and reduce swelling. Horse chestnut in particular is known for its use in chronic venous insufficiency, a condition that overlaps with the pressure-based nature of hemorrhoids. These herbs are available in capsules, teas, and topical creams. But they must be used with guidance, especially if you're on blood thinners or have kidney issues. Natural doesn't always mean harmless, but with care, these plants can become powerful allies. Fiber supplements, but only the right kind. You've heard it before. Add more fiber, but not all fibers are created equal. For hemorrhoids, soluble fiber is especially helpful. It softens stool, reduces straining, and allows the bowel to empty gently. Good options include psyllium husk, start small to avoid bloating, ground flax seed, also rich in omega-3s, acacia fiber, gentler on sensitive stomachs. Avoid supplements with artificial colors, flavors, or added sugars, and always pair fiber with more water, or the benefits vanish. Sylvia added 1 teaspoon of psyllium to her morning tea. Within a week, her stools were smoother, her straining decreased, and her confidence in the bathroom began to return. Not because of a drug, because of a choice. Relief is an act of kindness. When I talk about natural remedies, I'm not offering a cure. I'm offering a conversation with the earth, with your body, with your needs. You don't need to power through pain. You don't need to accept discomfort as punishment. You need and deserve relief that respects you. In the next chapter, we'll look at what happens when hemorrhoids don't go away, when they become chronic or advanced, and what options exist that are safe, effective, and aligned with your dignity. Because living well isn't about hiding the problem. It's about facing it with the full measure of care. When the pain doesn't pass, James Connors waited too long. He was 73, a retired bus driver from Tulsa. Quiet, proud, and not the type to complain. By the time he came to see me, he had been living with swollen, painful hemorrhoids for nearly 2 years, bleeding after bowel movements, avoiding long car rides, sleeping on his side, sitting only on one hip. "What brings you in today?" I asked gently. "My wife," he said. "She's tired of watching me suffer." His voice broke on the word suffer, and that's when I knew this was no longer about herbs or footstools. This was about restoration, because some wounds don't fade with creams and compresses. Some require intervention, not out of panic, out of dignity. Understanding chronic hemorrhoids. Not all hemorrhoids go away with lifestyle changes. Some become chronic, meaning they're persistently swollen, prolapsed, protruding, or thrombosed, clotted. Here's what chronic cases often look like. Bleeding that returns regularly. Prolapsed tissue that won't retract pain or burning with every bowel movement. Constant feeling of pressure or fullness. Difficulty cleaning the area, leading to hygiene issues. This is not rare. It is not shameful, and it is absolutely treatable. But you must be willing to speak up and let go of the idea that suffering silently is strength. The options most people never hear about. When I sat with James, we discussed the full spectrum of care, not just surgery, but a ladder of options, each step more specific, more tailored, more compassionate than people expect. Rubber band ligation. A small band is placed at the base of the hemorrhoid, cutting off its blood supply. It shrinks and falls off within days. Quick, often painless, and done in office. Infrared coagulation, IRC. A beam of infrared light causes the hemorrhoid to clot and shrink. Effective for smaller internal hemorrhoids. No cuts, no stitches. Sclerotherapy. A chemical solution is injected into the vein, causing it to collapse and fade, similar to treatment for varicose veins. Hemorrhoidectomy. Surgical removal of severe or prolapsed hemorrhoids. More invasive, but often the only lasting solution for advanced cases. Requires recovery, but many say the long-term relief is worth it. Stapled hemorrhoidopexy. For internal hemorrhoids, tissue is lifted and stapled back into place. Less painful than traditional surgery, shorter recovery. These are not punishments, they are tools of freedom. Each has risks and benefits. Each should be discussed with a compassionate, experienced doctor. But none of them mean you've failed. They mean you've chosen to heal more deeply. The day James sat down without fear, James chose rubber band ligation. It wasn't easy. He was nervous, self-conscious. He delayed the appointment twice, but after the procedure, his voice changed. He sat in my office, hands folded in his lap, not fidgeting, not squirming. "First time I've sat like this in 3 years," he said, and then, quietly, "I wish I hadn't waited." That's the moment I want for every patient, not just relief, but regret lifted, because living in fear of a chair is no way to live. What courage looks like. If you're struggling with hemorrhoids that won't heal, if you've tried the pads, the baths, the diet, if you dread the bathroom, avoid trips, sit sideways, this is not defeat. This is your body saying, please listen harder. And if listening means seeing a specialist, asking about procedures, or preparing for a minor surgery, do it. You don't owe anyone your silence. You owe your body the chance to sit, to rest, to live without dread. Toward the final word, in our final chapter, we'll return to the beginning, the chair, the quiet shame, the first sting of pain, and reflect on what healing from hemorrhoids truly means. It's not just about blood flow or bowel habits. It's about coming home to your body with gentleness, honesty, and strength. Because even the most uncomfortable pain can become a doorway if you're willing to walk through. The chair, revisited, remember Daniel, the man who stood up mid-conference call, coffee spilled, fire beneath him? He's 70 now, retired, happier. He recently sent me a photo. It wasn't of a vacation or a medical result. It was his chair. Same office, same desk, but now with a cushion, a footstool beneath, and sunlight pouring in through the window. He captioned it, "I sit here without fear now." That, to me, is the image of healing, not a perfect body, but a restored relationship with yourself, your space, your habits, your shame. What you've learned. If you've walked with me through this series, you've gathered more than tips. You've gathered truths, that hemorrhoids are not a personal failure, that sitting too long without movement is not harmless. It's a message that digestion is not just about food, but about rhythm, that your emotions shape your body more than you've ever been told, that healing is not always gentle, but it's always possible, that you don't have to choose between dignity and relief. And above all, you are not alone. You are not the only one in pain. When I began practicing medicine, hemorrhoids were a topic patients whispered about, if they mentioned them at all. Now, after thousands of conversations, I've learned this. Almost everyone has dealt with this pain at some point. Teachers, truck drivers, nurses, CEOs, grandparents. But because we don't talk about it, we suffer alone. So let me say this clearly. Your pain is valid, your discomfort is real, and your decision to seek relief is not weakness, it's wisdom. You don't need to push through everything. This has been a series about a small part of the body, but the lesson is bigger. It's about listening when something's not right. It's about tending to yourself before the discomfort becomes distress. It's about trading shame for stewardship. I've watched people reclaim their lives with a few changes. Setting a timer to stand, drinking more water, saying no to foods that betray them, saying yes to gentle treatment when needed, and most of all saying, I matter enough to care. The end is just a beginning. If you found yourself in these pages, in the stillness, the strain, the fear of flare-ups, I hope you also find yourself in the restoration. You can breathe deeper now, sit longer, walk farther, laugh easier. All because you listened and your body, however uncomfortable it once felt, has begun to trust you again. Because healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about becoming someone more whole, more aware, more free. The next time you sit at your desk, in your car, on the porch with someone you love, take a deep breath. And thank your body for staying with you, even when it hurt, even when you didn't know what to do. You listened, and now you're home. With all my respect, Dr.